Red and blue lights splashed across my lawn sirens, wailing like a cheap carnival ride. Two bulky men in knockoff uniforms stormed toward me, flashing badges that looked like they'd been printed at the local copy shop. "Sir One, barked by order of the HOA police. You're under arrest for non-compliance." And there she was, Karen Miller, perched on her porch like a queen on her throne, live streaming every second to the neighborhood Facebook group. She smirked. "We finally got him, neighbors." Justice, I didn't resist. I even let them snap on their plastic cuffs. But as the camera caught my face, I couldn't help but grin. Because here's the thing, I wasn't just some homeowner fixing up a boathouse. I was David Cross, the federal agent every scammer in 3 states whispered about in fear. They thought they were dragging me into their trap. What they didn't know was I'd been waiting for this moment all along. Before we dive in, comment below with your location and the current time where you're watching from. When I first bought the weathered house on Lot 12, I thought I was retiring into peace and quiet. After years in the bureau chasing fraudsters and organized crooks, I figured a cul-de-sac with manicured lawns and picket fences might finally give me the simple life. The property came with a tired old boathouse on the canal, a fixer-upper that whispered of weekends sanding wood, sipping coffee at dawn, and maybe teaching myself how to fish without turning it into a federal investigation. But peace, as I soon learned, is a fragile illusion, especially when you live under the thumb of a homeowners association run by a woman like Karen Miller. Karen was the kind of neighbor who measured grass blades with a ruler and treated the HOA handbook like scripture. She was blonde in the way only a bottle could achieve, armed with oversized sunglasses and a megaphone voice. She reigned over our street like a self-proclaimed sheriff, though her badge was nothing more than a clipboard and a Wi-Fi connection. Her Facebook Lives were infamous, part community news, part personal vendetta, all drama. My first week in, I got my inaugural compliance notice. Apparently the shade of beige I'd painted the boathouse trim was not HOA-approved sand dune, but unauthorized taupe. I stared at the paper in disbelief, wondering if anyone outside this zip code would ever care. The fine was $50. I paid it partly to avoid attention, partly to see what game she was playing. Then the citations came like clockwork. Grass too high, mailbox 2 inches off standard height, my recycling bin visibly unsorted. Each letter signed in loopy handwriting with the flourish HOA enforcement. I chuckled at first. After years of seeing forged subpoenas and counterfeit deeds, these notices looked like middle school projects. Wrong statute numbers, mismatched fonts, and even a typo in the word ordinance. It was sloppy, but sloppy with intent. Because here's the thing, real HOA boards have processes. They vote, they warn, they escalate slowly. But these citations had a rhythm too fast, too aggressive, like someone was trying to build a case against me overnight. It wasn't just me either. My neighbor June Parker, a sharp-witted widow with a garden that could win county fairs, confided one evening that she'd been fined 3 times for unauthorized rosebush expansion. Her crime planting flowers 2 inches past the walkway. Then there was Miguel Alvarez, a contractor by trade, who told me they cited him for tool visibility when he left a hammer on his porch. "They're fishing, man," Miguel said, sipping a beer on my deck. "They want people tired, scared, broke. It's not about grass or paint. It's about pushing us out." He wasn't wrong. I'd seen this kind of pressure tactic before, just not in cul-de-sacs. Fraud rings love to invent authority. They bury you in fake rules until you either pay up or give up. So I started paying closer attention. One morning, I took a stack of notices and laid them out on my workbench. Different dates, different infractions, but the same printer ink. The seal at the bottom, a generic clippered eagle, was identical on every form, smudged in the same corner, like someone forgot to clean the stamp. Even the signatures of different officers had the same exaggerated loops. I knew forgery when I saw it. These weren't sloppy neighbors. They were coordinated operators. Meanwhile, Karen strutted through the neighborhood like she'd won a local election. She had cronies, board members with clipboards who nodded at everything she said. Then there was Gordon Pike, the HOA president, a balding man with a salesman's smile and a handshake too quick to be sincere. He kept his distance, letting Karen do the dirty work, but I caught him once in a hushed argument with a contractor by the clubhouse. The words, "fast-track abatements and emergency sale," floated across the air before they noticed me watching. That phrase stuck in my head, emergency sale. See, in my old job, we had a saying, if someone uses a phrase that sounds too official to be real, that's where you dig. Emergency sales, compliance, raids, fast-track abatements, these weren't neighborhood management terms. They were the language of people trying to turn paper into profit. Still, I kept my head down. Out loud, I was just David Cross, middle-aged fixer-upper guy with a boathouse dream. I wore paint-stained shirts, carried lumber, and played the role of harmless new neighbor. Inside, though, the agent in me was taking notes, building patterns, watching how citations correlated with houses that later got listed for sale. Sure enough, I noticed a string of families moving out. One after another, they sold quickly, too quickly, and always through the same realty office tied to the HOA's property manager, Apex Community Services. On paper, it looked like coincidence. But I'd seen enough shell games to recognize a laundering funnel when I smelled one. Karen, of course, played Queen Bee the whole way. At block parties, she joked about how certain families couldn't hack the rules. She bragged about compliance numbers rising. She even told June straight-faced, "Some people just aren't HOA material." But the more she talked, the more her slip showed. Karen wasn't inventing this scheme. She was a pawn, a loud, ambitious pawn, but still, just a pawn. Someone else was pulling strings. And then came the kicker. One evening, after a long day sanding the boathouse deck, I heard the faint whir of a drone above my yard. Not the kind kids fly for fun, the serious kind, with a mounted camera. It hovered, circled, then zipped back toward the street. I followed it with my binoculars, watched it land in the hands of a man wearing an Apex Community Services vest. He tucked it into the back of a truck and drove off without noticing me. That was the moment I knew this wasn't HOA drama. This was surveillance, intimidation, and fraud, all dressed up as suburban rules. And that was when I made the decision. I wasn't going to file a complaint. I wasn't going to write letters. I was going to let them come to me. Because if Karen and her fake HOA police thought they were hunting me, they had no idea what kind of trap they were walking into. The morning it showed up in my mailbox, I almost laughed myself into spilling coffee. Not another citation for weeds or mailbox paint. This one was fancier. Gold foil, seal bold letters, and a subject line that made me stop mid-sip. HOA arrest summons. Yes, you read that right. A piece of printer paper telling me I was under arrest for repeated non-compliance with community bylaws. My crime list was laughable: mailbox misalignment, grass overgrowth, excessive boathouse noise. At the bottom, there was a threat: failure to surrender will result in forced apprehension by the HOA police. HOA police. My dog could come up with a better scam. Still, I studied it closely. Wrong fonts, mashed together statutes that didn't exist, even a community seal that looked suspiciously like Clippert from Word 2003. I'd seen counterfeit subpoenas in federal cases with more polish. But what made me choke on my laughter wasn't the ridiculousness, it was the intent. Whoever cooked this up wasn't just playing neighborhood games. This was organized intimidation. A paper sword designed to scare folks who didn't know the difference between real authority and fake, and it was working. That afternoon, I strolled over to chat with June Parker. She sat on her porch with a glass of sweet tea, her eyes scanning the same notice she'd received. "David," she said, voice tight, "they told me, if I don't pay up, they'll put a lien on my house, a lien over my roses." Across the street, Miguel waved me over. He'd been cited for hazardous tool display. Apparently, leaving his ladder against the garage for 5 minutes constituted a public safety violation. He showed me his summons too, identical wording, identical seal. Patterns always patterns. These weren't random. Someone was mass-producing bogus citations, dialing up the fear until folks either forked over fines or put their homes on the market. I'd seen this movie before, just with different actors. In the bureau, I worked fraud cases where crooks faked foreclosure, notices, manufactured liens, and even impersonated sheriffs to scare homeowners into quick sales. The HOA racket smelled the same, just smaller scale, dressed in cul-de-sac clothing. The next night, while the neighborhood slept, I sat at my workbench, under a bare bulb, every fake notice spread across the wood, like evidence in a case file. I connected dots with a red pen, circled dates, matched handwriting quirks. Every signature was just a variation of the same hand. Whoever this was, they weren't even trying to mask it well. And then came the drone. It hovered again, buzzing low over my boathouse. This time I didn't just watch, I filmed it with my phone. The drone zipped off toward the cul-de-sac entrance where a white contractor truck idled. Painted on the side, Apex Community Services. The property management company hired by the HOA. Now we were talking. I didn't confront the driver. Instead, I jotted down the plate and let him roll. Confrontation too early would blow my cover. And if this was half as big as I thought, Apex wasn't just mowing lawns and mailing dues. They were in on the grift, maybe even leading it. So I baited the trap. I wrote a polite little letter to the HOA police department acknowledging their summons. In it, I told them I'd be home on Friday evening, alone with all relevant documents for inspection. I even left the blinds cracked and a folder labeled "Appeal" visible on my dining table. The truth, that folder held nothing but blank printer paper. The real evidence, my recordings, photos, copies of every bogus citation, was tucked safely in a lockbox behind my boathouse wall. Friday came. Before sunset, I wired up hidden cameras under the eaves of my house. One faced the driveway, another the front door. I set a tracker, disguised as a key fob, near the table, ready to slip into their vehicle. And for flavor, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. No sting operation is complete without coffee. Miguel, ever the curious neighbor, stopped by mid-setup. "What's all this, Hermano? Call it Neighborhood Watch version 2.0, I told him with a grin. He didn't push, though. I saw the spark of suspicion. As the hour approached, I sat calmly in my living room, lights low, folder on the table, phone in my pocket, already recording. I could almost hear my old bureau trainer's voice: control the room, control the outcome. At exactly 8:13 p.m., headlights swept across my driveway. A white Tahoe rolled up, emblazoned with magnetic decals, neighborhood compliance unit. Out stepped two men in tactical polos, cargo pants, and utility belts that screamed cop cosplay. One was burly, shaved head face like a bulldog, Randall Briggs. The other was leaner, with nervous eyes darting like he expected applause, Fox Turner. Mr. Cross, Randall barked. By order of the HOA police, you are hereby under arrest. Behind them, in the glow of a porch light, Karen Miller stood poised, with her phone streaming live to her beloved HOA group. We're cleaning up the neighborhood, she announced like a ringmaster at a circus. I stayed cool. Arrested. For what? Owning a lawnmower with expired registration, Fox fumbled with his fake badge. Non-compliance with multiple bylaw infractions. You are required to surrender all documentation immediately. I raised my hands in mock surrender. Gentlemen, you're in luck. The documents are right there on the table. As Randall moved past me, I angled my wrist, just so letting my hidden cuff cam catch a crystal-clear shot of his counterfeit badge. Fox, eager to impress Karen, slapped on plastic cuffs. They tightened around my wrists, but I barely flinched. Because here's the truth, I'd slipped out of real bureau-grade cuffs in training exercises. These dollar store knockoffs wouldn't hold a child. While they dragged me toward the Tahoe, I tripped, dropping the tracker key fob onto the floorboard. Randall cursed, shoved me inside. Perfect placement. Karen cheered, narrating to her phone, "Justice for our community. The HOA police do not tolerate violators." She posed in front of their flashing portable light bar like she was starring in a low-budget crime drama. I bit back a laugh. They thought they had me exactly where they wanted me. But in reality, they had no idea. They just walked into my game. The cuffs bit into my wrists as Randall Briggs shoved me into the Tahoe, but I barely noticed. I'd been cuffed before by real cops during training exercises where mistakes had consequences. These plastic restraints, they felt like cheap Halloween props. Still, I played the role. Slouched shoulders, sigh of resignation, a perfect picture of a man finally caught in Karen Miller's web. From the driveway, Karen squealed into her live stream. "Neighbors, you are watching justice in action. The HOA police have apprehended David Cross, serial violator and neighborhood menace." Her oversized sunglasses reflected the flashing red and blue light bar suctioned to the Tahoe's roof. She strutted into frame like a B-list celebrity, grinning wide. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Inside the SUV, Fox Turner took the passenger seat, fumbling with a clipboard stacked with pre-printed arrest reports. Randall slammed the gear shift, his jaw clenched. The Tahoe lurched forward. So I said casually, from the back seat, "What's the going rate for impersonating law enforcement these days? Does it pay better than mowing lawns?" Randall's eyes snapped to the rearview mirror, a flash of anger flickering before he hit it. Fox cleared his throat nervously, muttering, "Keep quiet." "Quiet," I chuckled. "You cuff a guy over mailbox paint and you want him to be quiet. That's comedy." They didn't answer. Good. Their silence was admission enough. As the SUV rumbled down the dark suburban street, I studied my surroundings. The dashboard was cluttered: fast food wrappers, a half-empty energy drink, a police scanner that wasn't even turned on. The decals on the Tahoe door were peeling at the corners, the kind you order online and slap on in a hurry. Amateur hour through and through. But the important detail, the tracker I'd dropped now, sat snug in the footwell, broadcasting their every move. My bureau team would be watching the ping in real time. Not yet, no sirens, no cavalry. I needed them to lead me deeper to the heart of the operation. Karen's voice still carried faintly through the open window as we pulled away. "Justice, neighbors. Justice," I smirked. If only she knew the show she'd just scripted for herself. The ride lasted 15 minutes, weaving through industrial backroads I knew well. Not toward a police station, not toward City Hall. No, this was the opposite direction, into the kind of forgotten strip of warehouses where bad deals thrive. Randall parked beside a row of storage units, each one identical, metal doors, padlocked, numbers stenciled in fading paint. A single floodlight buzzed overhead, throwing shadows sharp enough to cut glass. Fox hopped out first, clipboard tucked under his arm. Randall yanked me from the SUV, shoving me toward Unit 47. The lock clicked, the door screeched upward, and the smell hit me, ink, laminate, burnt plastic. Inside, I saw the lair. Tables stacked with badge laminators, seal stamps, pre-printed liens, HOA letterhead by the ream, clipboards, burner phones, even a stack of fake compliance uniforms folded neatly in plastic bins. On one wall, a corkboard pinned with a flowchart of addresses, some crossed out, some circled in red. Next to each address, scribbled notes like pressure applied or sale pending. Fox set the clipboard down like a proud student presenting homework. Got another one, boss, he muttered to no one in particular. Randall shoved me into a folding chair at the center of the room. Sit, he barked. I sat, calm, observant. My eyes traced every detail, serial numbers on laminators' invoices, with the Apex Community Services letterhead, even a half-burned candle that smelled faintly of cinnamon. Crooks, I thought, but crooks with poor taste. Listen, Randall, I said, leaning back. You've got ambition, I'll give you that. Fake cops, fake summons, fake everything. But you forgot one thing, he glared. What's that? I grinned. Me. For a moment, silence. Then Fox chuckled nervously like he wasn't sure if he should. Randall swore under his breath. They didn't understand yet. That was fine. Understanding would come later with handcuffs that actually locked. I needed evidence, so I played clumsy. As Randall turned his back, I flexed against the cuffs, slipping free in less than 30 seconds. Years of training made it second nature. I kept the plastic still looped around my wrists, loose enough to remove at any time, tight enough to fool them. While they rifled through the appeal folder I'd baited them with, I slid my phone into my palm and snapped a few quick shots. Laminators, ledgers, forged seals, all caught in sharp detail. Then I set the phone to audio record, tucking it under the chair. That was when I heard it. Randall muttering into a burner phone. Yeah, we got him. Cross. Bring Doyle the files he'll want to see. Doyle. My eyes narrowed. So the quiet old neighbor wasn't just a harmless retiree. My hunch about a bigger fish was right. Fox shuffled papers, reading aloud from the ledger. We got 3 houses this month, boss. That's quick turnover. Randall grunted approval. Keep it that way. HOA police don't slow down. They laughed like schoolyard bullies who thought they'd invented crime. I let them think they had the upper hand. Because the longer they bragged, the more rope they handed me. When the hour dragged on, I decided to stir the pot. So, Randall Fox, I said casually, you boys ever think about the irony, calling yourselves HOA police when the only thing you're policing is your own pockets? Randall spun, fist clenching. Shut your mouth. I leaned forward, smirk widening. Oh, I hit a nerve. What's the endgame here? Scare families out, flip their houses through Apex, line your boss's pockets. Tell me, do you get health benefits with that badge or just free HOA cupcakes? Fox's laugh escaped before he could stop it. Randall shot him a glare sharp enough to cut steel. That was enough for me. Their cracks were showing. The arrest was a farce, but the evidence was real, piling up by the second. When Randall finally decided to process me, I made sure to stumble again, this time bumping the ledger just enough to slide a sheet into my pocket. It listed addresses, dates, and initials GP and MG, Gordon Pike and Marla Gates. The web was wider than Karen's ego. I leaned back in the chair, cuffs dangling loosely on my wrists, heart steady. The night was young, the evidence abundant, and the noose tightening. Let them think I was their prisoner. In reality, I just walked them into the biggest bust this neighborhood had ever seen. If you've never been inside a fraud den, let me paint the picture. It doesn't look like Hollywood. There are no walls of high-tech monitors or geniuses typing at lightning speed. No real fraud is tacky. Real fraud smells like plastic ink and fear. That storage unit was exactly that, a shrine to mediocrity. Rows of folding tables sagged under the weight of laminators, stamp presses, and cheap office printers that whirred like dying animals. Boxes overflowed with pre-printed HOA letterhead seals bought off Etsy and clipboards stacked like ammunition. There were even mannequins in half-finished compliance officer uniforms, black polos with iron-on patches that read HOA Police in crooked letters. It was pathetic. But pathetic can still ruin lives. Randall and Fox strutted around like they'd built the Pentagon. Fox proudly demonstrated how the laminator could spit out a fake badge in under 2 minutes. He even slid one across the table toward me. See professional quality. I held back a laugh. The word authority was misspelled authority. Impressive, I said dryly, if you're arresting toddlers. Randall growled, but Fox puffed up with pride, clearly oblivious. That was the danger of amateurs, they didn't know they were pawns. While they bragged, I did what I do best, observe. On one corkboard, a hand-drawn map of the neighborhood was pinned with red strings connecting certain homes. Some were circled, others X'd out. Next to each scrawled notes, lien filed, family resisting sale, pending. I recognized some names. June Parker's house was circled in red. Miguel Alvarez circled twice. My own lot 12, big black X. This wasn't random harassment, it was a system. They targeted specific houses, overwhelmed owners with fake citations, then threatened liens. Families panicked, sold cheap, and guess who bought them? Apex Community Services. It was an HOA-themed racket, a carousel of intimidation and real estate fraud, hidden behind pastel lawns and block parties. I knew this model. I'd seen it run in Detroit, Miami, even overseas. Always the same formula: forge, authority, exploit, fear, move assets fast, and always someone higher up pulling strings. That someone's name slipped again. Doyle. Randall muttered into his phone. Yeah, Doyle will be here in the morning. Wants to check progress. The retired neighbor. The man who waved from his porch every morning with a mug of coffee. The one people trusted because he seemed harmless. I filed it away. My gut was right. Doyle wasn't just background scenery. He was the puppet master. Hours passed. They left me in that chair guarded by Fox, who spent most of the time scrolling through TikTok videos. My plastic cuffs hung loose, a stage prop. I could have walked out at any moment, but patience wins wars. So I used the time. I slid my phone under the table, snapped pictures of ledgers, invoices, even the badge kits. Each image uploaded automatically to a secure cloud link only my bureau team could access. Then I went hunting for sound bites. Fox, I said casually, what's the cut? You guys get a slice of every house. He grinned, too eager. Of course. Doyle's system works, man. Families sell, Apex flips, everyone eats. HOA police keep order. And Karen, I asked, feigning boredom. Fox chuckled. She thinks she's queen. Doyle feeds her lines, lets her play sheriff. Keeps her happy while the real money moves. Got it. Confirmed. Karen was noise. Doyle was signal. Randall eventually stormed back in ledger in hand. We've got 3 properties moving this month. Pike's got the board in line, Marla's notarizing papers. Smooth. Marla. Another name. The niece. I smiled inwardly. Every puzzle piece sliding into place. When they finally grew tired of gloating, Randall announced, "We'll move him tomorrow. Doyle wants a word." Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. But I couldn't just sit. I had to leave breadcrumbs. Evidence. When Fox stepped out for a smoke, I pulled one cuff completely free, rifled quickly through the nearest folder, and slipped a document into my jacket. It was a lien notice template half filled with a family's name, and a forged notary stamp already stamped Marla Gates. Gold. Pure gold. Then I sat back down, cuffs re-looped around my wrists, chair creaking like I'd never moved. When Fox returned, he barely glanced my way. Amateurs. Later that night, I staged a little drama, pretended to struggle against the cuffs until they snapped. The noise drew Randall in, furious. "You think you're funny?" he snarled, yanking out zip ties. I let him tie me tighter, grimacing for show. Then, as soon as he turned, I flexed again, slipped out silently, re-looped. Control the room. Always. While they argued over next steps, I pocketed another souvenir, a USB drive labeled Board Minutes. HOA. It was warm from the laptop, suggesting it held recent files. That kind of evidence could break this case wide open. By 3 a.m., the adrenaline haze had settled. I leaned back in the chair, eyes half closed, pretending to doze, but my mind was spinning, replaying every piece of evidence. The fake summons with gold foil, the drone tied to Apex, the storage unit filled with badges, seals, ledgers, Fox's loose mouth linking Doyle, Pike, and Marla. The USB in my pocket. It was enough to indict half the HOA, but I didn't want half. I wanted the head of the snake. Tomorrow, Doyle would walk into this den, and tomorrow I'd be waiting wired ready with the bureau closing in. I almost smiled in the dark. They thought they'd broken me with plastic cuffs and fake authority. But really, they'd just walked me straight into their lair, given me the keys to their kingdom, and set the stage for their downfall. And the best part, Karen Miller was still at home live streaming her victory, completely oblivious that she just broadcast evidence of felony impersonation to the whole neighborhood and half the internet. Oh, tomorrow was going to be fun. Morning came too quickly. My neck ached from the folding chair, but adrenaline erased fatigue. Randall and Fox had left hours earlier, thinking I was trussed like a turkey. The truth, my wrists were free, my pockets stuffed with evidence, and my phone still streaming to bureau servers. By noon, they marched me back into the Tahoe smug as ever. We'll take you to the board meeting, Randall grunted. Doyle wants you present. Perfect. Exactly the stage I needed. The HOA clubhouse sat at the edge of the cul-de-sac, a beige building with faux columns and a roof shaped like it aspired to be a courthouse. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and sugar cookies hit me. Rows of folding chairs filled with neighbors, each clutching dues, notices, or compliance letters. They whispered, confused by my appearance in plastic cuffs. Karen Miller was already center stage, oversized sunglasses, perched on her headphone live streaming as usual. Welcome, neighbors, she trilled. Today is about accountability. Today we show violators there are consequences. She pointed toward me like a prosecutor in a courtroom drama. Behold, serial non-complier David Cross finally brought to justice by our brave HOA. Police applause broke out from a handful of loyalists, but most of the room shifted uneasily. June Parker sat front row, her lips tight. Miguel leaned against the wall, arms crossed, jaw clenched. They weren't buying it. At the podium, Gordon Pike adjusted his tie. Balding with the practiced grin of a used car salesman, he exuded false calm. Thank you, Karen, he said smoothly. Let's proceed with today's agenda. Proposed dues increase, expedited property abatements, and I cut him off. Loud, clear. Before we discuss dues, let's discuss this. From my pocket, I produced one of their own forged summonses. The gold seal gleamed under fluorescent lights. Gasps rippled through the room. This, I said, raising my voice, is not a legal document. It's fraud. Every citation, every fine fake, cooked up by your so-called HOA police, Randall, Fox, and yes, Karen Miller. Karen shrieked. Lies, neighbors don't listen, save it, I snapped. I tossed the paper onto the podium. I've seen counterfeit subpoenas with better craftsmanship. You misspelled ordinance. Twice. Laughter bubbled from the back row. Even Miguel cracked a grin. Pike's smile faltered. Mr. Cross, please. Oh, we're just getting started. I pulled out the USB I'd pocketed. This little drive board minutes. Ledgers. Every crooked deal you've cut. And here's the kicker, I held up the lien notice with Marla Gates's forged stamp. Your notary's been busy. The room exploded in murmurs. June leaned forward, eyes wide. Karen screeched louder, waving her phone like a sword. Don't you see? He's making it up. He's dangerous. But the neighbors weren't looking at me. They were looking at Pike, at Karen, at the sweat beading on Randall's forehead as he loomed by the door. I pressed harder. Neighbors, you ever wonder why so many houses sold in record time? Why Apex always swoops in to save the day? Because these clowns manufactured violations, buried you in fines and forced sales. You were played. Randall snapped. Enough. He lunged toward me, grabbing my arm. I let him, because right then the clubhouse doors banged open. Federal agents' hands where we can see them, dozens of real badges flooded the room. My bureau team. Guns drawn, voice commanding. The air shifted from HOA farce to federal sting in a heartbeat. Randall froze, his plastic cuffs dangling uselessly. Fox dropped his clipboard and whimpered. Pike stumbled backward, sputtering. Karen shrieked. This is harassment. I'm the HOA president's right-hand. Correction, I said coolly, slipping free of the cuffs. You're under arrest for impersonation, fraud, and racketeering. June clapped. Miguel let out a sharp whistle. Neighbors who'd suffered months of harassment cheered as agents cuffed Randall, Fox, and Pike. Cookies crumbled underfoot in the chaos. But one chair sat empty. Doyle's in face. He wasn't there. My stomach sank. As Karen was hauled out screaming about her rights, I knew the game wasn't over. Doyle hadn't shown his face yet. The old wolf was watching from the shadows, waiting for the dust to settle. And I was going to drag him into the light. The clubhouse still buzzed with chaos when they dragged Karen, Randall, Fox, and Pike into federal vans. Neighbors huddled in shocked clusters, whispering about what they'd just witnessed. Some were jubilant, others stunned into silence. Me, I kept scanning the room, searching for one face. Edgar Doyle. The old retiree from 2 doors down, the man who waved politely every morning with his coffee mug, the one who always seemed harmless. Except Randall's slip the night before told me otherwise. Doyle wants to check progress. But Doyle hadn't been in that room, which meant he was watching from somewhere else. I stepped outside into the cool evening air, my phone buzzing with updates from the bureau team. They were cataloging evidence, interrogating suspects. Still, my gut said the true mastermind was free. Where is Doyle? I asked one of the agents. He frowned. House is dark. No sign of him leaving. Too neat. Too clean. Doyle wasn't hiding in his recliner. He was already moving pieces. I walked home slowly, letting the quiet of the neighborhood settle. Porch lights glowed. Curtains twitched. The calm after the storm. When I turned the corner, I saw Doyle standing on his porch mug in hand, just like every morning. Except it wasn't morning and that wasn't coffee. The faint clink of ice told me whiskey filled his cup. He raised it in a mock salute. Evening Agent Cross. So he knew. I didn't flinch. You should have been at the board meeting, Doyle. Your friends missed you. He chuckled low and gravelly. That circus, no thanks. I prefer to watch the puppets dance from the wings. The casual confidence in his tone chilled me more than Randall's bluster ever had. Doyle wasn't rattled. He was composed. And dangerous. Funny, I said, stepping onto his lawn. Your name keeps popping up. Ledgers, phone calls. Even Fox couldn't keep his mouth shut. He sipped from his mug. Fox is a boy who likes to hear himself talk. But me, I prefer results. That was when I noticed the faint glow from his garage. I angled my body, catching a glimpse racks of boxes, filing cabinets, a workstation with multiple monitors. So much for harmless retiree. You ran this whole racket, I said. His smile deepened. Don't sound so surprised. You of all people should know real power never shows its badge. It whispers, nudges, lets others bark for it. Karen got her spotlight, Pike got his cut, Randall played cop. But me, I built the machine. He set the mug down, stepping closer. You think tonight's arrests cripple me? They don't. They were pawns, replaceable. The houses will keep flipping. Apex has layers you haven't even peeled yet. My jaw tightened, but I stayed calm. You underestimate me, Doyle. I don't stop at pawns. I take the king. He laughed a cold, hollow laugh that rolled through the quiet street. King no, son. I'm the board. And you're a piece wandering where you don't belong. Then he leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. And I know the legend. The FBI agent scammers fear. That was my story. I made sure they whispered your name. Do you know why? To flush you out? And it worked. For the first time, my pulse skipped. So Doyle hadn't just known me. He had baited me. The fake HOA police, the citations, the theatrics, it was all to draw me out to confirm the myth. Congratulations, Agent Doyle, said smirking. You just played the role I wrote for you. The next hours blurred into a chess match. My bureau team swept the clubhouse, arrested Karen's inner circle, froze accounts. Meanwhile, I kept Doyle talking. He was careful, never confessing outright, but his arrogance was a confession in itself. When he finally retreated inside, I tailed from a distance. Through the garage window, I saw him stuffing files into a duffel, burning documents in a metal bin. He was preparing to run. I alerted my team, but Doyle was cunning. Instead of fleeing by car, he slipped through the back gate, leading to the canal. His skiff bobbed quietly at the dock behind his house. Of course, the canal, the same waterway behind my boathouse. Moonlight shimmered on the water as I followed, boots crunching softly on the dock. Doyle was already untying ropes, duffel slung over his shoulder. Going somewhere, I called out. He froze, then turned slowly, eyes gleaming. Always, Agent, always moving. That's how you stay ahead. We stood facing each other, water lapping between us, the night thick with tension. You won't get far, I said. He smirked. I don't need far, just enough to torch what I know and start again. You can't kill a system, David. You know that. He reached into his duffel, pulling out a lighter. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd torch evidence right there. But instead, he held it casually, taunting. Funny thing, he said. I spread your legend, built your myth. And now here we are, me proving it true. You are the boogeyman they fear. But me, he clicked the lighter flame dancing in the dark. I'm the man who writes the ghost stories. I stepped forward, calm but firm. No, Doyle. You're just another fraud hiding behind paper swords and scared pawns. And tonight your story ends at this dock. Behind me, faint sirens grew louder, my team closing in. Doyle heard them too. His smirk faltered for the first time. You think you've won, he spat. I let the silence stretch, then smiled thinly. No, Doyle. I know I have. Doyle's smirk melted as the sirens swelled. The canal reflected blue and red, shimmering like liquid justice. He hesitated, lighter flickering in his hand, duffel heavy with evidence at his side. You won't stop me, he hissed. I stepped onto the dock, closing the gap. You're not the first man who thought that. The bureau boats swept in, fast floodlights blazing. Agents leapt out, weapons trained. Edgar Doyle, hands in the air. For a second, I thought he'd try something stupid. But even predators know when the hunt is over. His shoulders slumped, lighter snuffed duffel, slipping from his grasp. He raised his hands, shadows, stretching long under the lights. I breathed out slowly. Checkmate. The days that followed were a blur of headlines and depositions. The HOA police scandal dominated local news. Reporters camped outside the cul-de-sac, shoving microphones at anyone willing to talk. Karen Miller. Oh, she tried to spin it. claimed she was misled, that she only wanted to protect the community. Too bad her dozens of live streams showed her gleefully cheering while fraud happened under her nose. She was charged with aiding and abetting impersonation and obstruction. Randall and Fox charged with impersonating law enforcement, fraud, conspiracy, you name it. The courts will sort them out, but let's just say Halloween costumes won't be part of their future wardrobes. Gordon Pike, the slick HOA president, went down hard. The USB drive I'd pocketed held board minutes, email trails, and payment logs. Turns out Pike was laundering money through Apex Community Services and pocketing kickbacks on every fraudulent sale. And Doyle, he was the crown jewel, charged with racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The duffel he dropped contained ledgers so detailed even the IRS clapped. His myth ended not with fireworks but with cold steel cuffs. But the real victory wasn't just the arrests, it was the neighborhood. The court stripped the old HOA board of all authority. A federal trustee was appointed to oversee operations until a new real board could be elected. Dues were slashed in half, fines revoked, fraudulent liens voided. Families who had been pressured into selling restitution funds were created. Homes clawed back. For the first time in years, people smiled at each other across driveways instead of ducking behind hedges. June Parker planted a new row of roses, untouched, unfined, blooming defiantly. Miguel fired up his grill, inviting the block for a celebratory barbecue. The neighborhood wasn't just surviving, it was reclaiming itself. And me, I finally rebuilt my boathouse. Sanded, painted, and sturdy. When I sat on the dock at dawn with coffee in hand, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Karen's graffiti HOA Police Forever was scrubbed clean, replaced by kids' chalk drawings of rainbows and smiley faces. I couldn't have asked for better irony. Yes, revenge had been sweet, but justice tasted even better. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just about fraud, forged papers, or fake badges. It was about fear. That's what scams always rely on. Fear of authority, fear of losing your home, fear of standing up. And that's why they work, because people think they're powerless. But here's the truth: power built on lies is fragile. It only lasts as long as people stay silent. The moment you shine a light, the whole house of cards collapses. Karen thought her clipboard made her queen. Doyle thought whispers made him untouchable. Randall and Fox thought plastic cuffs made them cops. But in the end, they were all exposed by their own arrogance. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. Never be afraid to question authority that doesn't feel right. Real power doesn't hide behind costumes or paperwork. Real power is accountability, transparency, and truth. So if you ever find yourself feeling cornered, remember, you're not powerless. You're not alone. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand tall and say, "Show me the proof." Thank you for walking through this story with me. If it made you think, smile, or even laugh at the absurdity, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare of your own. And don't forget, subscribe, because the next story might just make you look twice at your own neighbors.